Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today we have a special guest, I would say a friend of mine as well, Mr. Ralph Rickermann. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you, man?
I'm good. Really, thanks for doing this. I know that we had some challenges, and I'm grateful that you were able to, stick with it. So I really appreciate it. I wanted to ask you, what was your earliest musical memory?
Actually, my first, you can cut and paste, but you can edit. So one of my first music memories was, listening of Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. I don't remember the songs, but not the actual songs, but the electronic things in between, and it scared the shit out of me. And then the second thing that he exposed me to was bringing me to my very first live school concert. So at the local school, I heard for the very first time I heard a live band ever, and I was completely overwhelmed and impressed with the sound that the bass guitar made, like vibrating of the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And I called it Boom Boom because I was like, I don't know, like 8 or 10 years old.
Yeah.
I walked around for like months and months in our house, like telling everyone I want to make Boom Boom, because I was fascinated with the vibration in the stomach that bass guitar created. And coming from Germany, where there's no censorship, there was always Playboy magazines and Penthouse laying around, and so sometimes I was looking at these magazines, even as a little kid. People don't care over there, and talking to people. I want to make Boom Boom. My parents misunderstood it. They thought I wanted to paint chicks, like in my early age. What's wrong with our child? It took them years to figure out that it actually was that I wanted to play bass,
Right.
And so by accident, they called for my 15th birthday. It took that many years. The local music store and said, get us the cheapest guitar over here because he won't shut up about this boom boom bullshit. So by accident, they bought me a bass, which was the cheapest. And that's when I started.
Oh, they thought they were getting a guitar, but they actually ended up getting you a bass?
Correct. And then I started blowing up every single radio and I got the beat. I mean, they beat the shit out of me. Every second day, I got like beat up for blowing up another radio.
But you also played, if I read correctly in my research, you played piano, drums, guitar, bass. So bass was the instrument that you're most drawn to because there was a feeling of that when you saw your live concert. But don't you get the same kind of feeling if you're playing percussion as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, later then, when I actually started, when I already blew up all the radios, and my parents had no choice but to buy me an amplifier for my Christmas. Then I was always in a battle with our cleaning lady, who was an opera singer. And so when I came home, I would smoke a little weed and then, play. I was already like 15 then. Yeah. Played, bass all day long. Like after that, like I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just playing stuff, like improvising. And I'm a master of improvising. That's how I learned all my stuff. I always improvise. Even when I do film music, I always improvise. All this like improvisation. And so our cleaning lady would start singing opera, and then I would turn up my bass. She would sing louder. I would turn it up more, and she would sing louder. So it was like an escalation of noise in our house on a daily basis. At least 2-3 times a week, our neighbors called the cops because she was screaming on top of her lungs. I was like, boom, 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 with the bass. It was just nuts. So that's kind of like how I grew up the first years, and then they got me a teacher, and my grades immediately dropped. So I had maybe 10 lessons or 12 lessons, and then they pulled me out of it.
Yeah.
The rest I taught myself.
That's funny. So just so we can go back to your origin story, Germany.
Oh, wait, to answer your question, sorry to interrupt, because
Yeah.
you actually asked me a question about all the other instruments. So I had a best friend at that time, because I wasn't really close to my family. I was never really a big fan of my family. I come from a family of money, and all they ever talked about was money and stuff. They never talked about art or feelings or any of that. So I had a friend who had a great family, very, caring and all that, and they supported music and arts and yada yada. So he had a drum set. He was a drummer, or still is, and I think now he's a police guy or something, or works in the army or something like that. And of course married. And he was playing drums. He had a piano down there, and we had a band. My first band was called Rain. And then we had a piano in the rehearsal room. There was a drum set. There was like 3 or 4 guitar amplifiers. So a lot of times we would just jam, and he would play bass, I would play drums, or I would play piano, he would play guitar or bass or something else. So we would always jump around between different instruments, not knowing what we were doing, but just banging around on them, and then slowly we learned.
Interesting. Yeah. So let me go back, because you mentioned you grew up in Germany. Where exactly did you grow up?
I was born in a city called Lübeck, which is about 30 or 40 miles north of Hamburg, close to the Baltic Sea, which also has attached Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and a little
by
bit
the
of
way,
Russia.
just so you know, so I'm Lithuanian. It's a Baltic country, so I'm on the other side of the Baltic Sea.
Yeah, so you know.
Yeah.
So I'm just for the listeners, because a lot of Americans don't know exactly. Because first time I came to Europe, funny story, to America from Europe, I met this old lady, like 70 or 80 years old in Florida. She's like, "Oh, you're such a nice gentleman. Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Germany." She says, "Really? How long did you drive?" I'm like, "Okay." No, I was born and raised in Lübeck. Then I grew up in Bad Schwartau, which is even a little further north. It's actually like a bicycle ride away from the Baltic Sea. And I really grew up on the water because my father always had big yachts. As I said, they came from money. All my family, like his brothers and sisters, we always spent like most of the time in the summer on the Baltic Sea, kind of like on the ocean.
So, and you sort of alluded to this already, your childhood, where you weren't really close to your parents were together. You have siblings? Brothers, sisters?
Yes, I have a sister who's still around. She is a saxophone player. She actually started playing when she was 20. After I already was successful, she decided that she wanted to make music as well. Late start, but she got lucky. She then later joined Rod Stewart, played with him for 14 years. Of course, she met the musical supervisor at one of my parties with like 800 people at my first house, where also all the Kardashians, Paris Hilton, J-Lo, and all these other people were present.
Got it.
And then I had a brother who was 3.5 years older than me, but he developed like manic depressive, like a sickness, when he joined the army, because we were very, very strict. Like there was a lot of screaming and yelling going on in our household. I never ever was told in my whole life that, like the words "I love you" from my parents or any of my family members. So it was very, very, very money and stuff orientated, and I guess that also drove me to become an artist, because as an artist, through your arts, you become a lot of love, especially as a musician. You're lucky as a musician because you get immediate responses from the audience.
Yeah, it's that feeling of love. It's cold, and when you're doing art, there's a warmth, and then there's an exchange with the audience, and it's immediate gratification. So, that feeling of love is being fulfilled at some level or another. However, and this is just as a question, if you're not doing that, if you're not getting it from the audience, do you feel like you don't know how to give that to yourself at this point?
I never had a problem with anything because I always had really good friends, and then later I had long-term relationships. Like a lot of people think that I'm kind of slutty when they know me from my social media, because I always with like good-looking girls. I had my time when I first joined the band, believe me, but for about 3 years. But I'm more of a long-term relationships person. And so I had really good, I still have very, very good, deep, long lasting friendships that I get a lot of love out of. And also, my relationships with women are very deep and spiritual and, based on a lot of like, not just physical, but mental love as well,
Yeah.
which I didn't really get much when I was growing up. But for some reason, a lot of people that saw me growing up, they said it's a wonder that you didn't become, crazy or something, because my family was really out of control.
Yeah, but
And
you were able to find sort of your niche in music. And were your parents supportive of that at all? Of what you were doing with music?
not at all. They hated it. And I mean, I don't really like using the word hate. It's usually not in my vocabulary. I don't use it for myself. But my parents literally hated everything that I did. Like they didn't like, let's say it like this, they did not like, extremely did not like the people I surrounded myself with, which pretty much all had long hair, was somewhat hippies, and they were all somewhat artists on the music industry. Then I also started, my first drug ever was LSD. Then I started smoking weed on the way, very early, like when I was 15, on a daily basis, which I think helped me also a lot, like, giving myself a lot of love and inspiration as a teenager. And I don't do it anymore. Unfortunately, I stopped about 10 years ago because I think smoking weed on a daily basis, when it's a little bit, when you just get a little high, but not really stoned, it makes me super alert and very, very creative. And I think, for most artists, by the way, people always ask me like about this. It's a very interesting subject. I'm swerving off a little bit now,
Yeah.
but I think when you think about it, almost all the greatest pieces of music or pieces of art have been written under the influence of something. I don't support it, okay, but it's a fact. Like, look at the guy behind me, Jim Morrison, right? One of my paintings.
Yeah.
He lived his life in the subconscious, one of the greatest poets we ever had in music. He was hardly ever sober. And so for me as well, when I grew up, I was literally pretty much all day, every day, I was high. I was never stoned, but just like one tiny little hit, like every 4 or 5 hours. And I was always making music. I was always creative. I was always nice. I was always having a big smile on my face. But even before that, when I was a child, before I started doing all that, I was a very happy person. I never was grumpy, or I never was affected by all the hate in our family.
Well, that's good. You were able to evolve from there. And I kind of agree with you on cannabis. And I think there's a tipping point. Too much of anything can create negative connotations. So if you're doing a lot of drugs, maybe creatively, it helps to be able to stimulate creativity, but also it actually suppresses performance for some people if you're getting too inebriated, too many drugs. So you got to find that kind of right medium for yourself, as you were
Yeah,
saying.
that's why I said, like, I always took like a tiny little bit, just one hit, just so I'm like slightly high, like a little bit elevated. I never ever smoked too much where I felt like, oh shit, I'm stoned. So, and I don't like that feeling. I
Yeah.
never did. I never will. And you know, for me, because there was so much aggression in my family, I got like literally beat up on a daily basis.
Yeah.
When my father came home when I was a little child, when I heard his car approaching the garage, literally my hands started shaking like this because I got so much aggression, constantly screaming and like, kicking and beating. And a few times he beat me so hard that I had to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And but still, it never affected me. I was able to push it away and turn it into love, and turn it into something artistic and something, that carried me throughout my career and my dreams and my passion for music, all the way to America, where then I made all my dreams
Yeah.
come true.
It's a
And
wonderful thing.
I
Yeah,
got
go
them
ahead.
all back because now they're all kissing my ass.
we have so many similarities because I came from an abusive household and I found cannabis and I was an artist. I did all kinds of different things, and that was my escape because you're absolutely right. There's something in being creative that allows you to find that love, that passion, those things that are missing in the household when it's cold, when you don't get the I love yous, when you get the hugs and kisses, and you just get abused all the time. So I completely concur with you. And now, I speak to my dad every day now. I'm past all that, and
Yeah.
it came full circle. You're absolutely right. Going back to music for a little bit, I know you're well, I like this conversation because I think it's interesting, but I want to weave in music. Bass is your primary instrument, even though you play many other things. Did you have musical info like you just showed Jim Morrison? Did you have specific musical influences, and did you have influences specifically on the bass?
Yes and no. I mean, as I said before, the way how I learned pretty much everything was mostly how to like by improvising. Like I would be at home and just playing all day long, like minimum 4 to 6 hours a day. I would play every single day from all my life, and I listened to a lot of music when I was young. I listened to a lot of, in the beginning, I listened to, funny enough, actually, Pink Floyd. That scared the shit out of me when I was a little child. I listened to, yes, Gentle Giant, Genesis. I really I've always liked, and I still like bands that have not just good songs, but they have songs that tell stories.
Yeah.
I'm actually a little bit less focused on bass. I'm more focused on the vocals and the rhythm. For me, the most important two things in music, in pop music, is usually the drums, the beat, and the vocals, the melody, and the story. If there's a singer that sings amazing, like Mariah Carey or whatever, Janis Joplin or something, but has an amazing voice, but does not really have a story to tell, I get a little bit easily bored. I can be more attracted to someone like this dude who doesn't really know how to sing, Jim Morrison,
Right.
but tells a story. Although I'm not really a big fan of the Doors, I never really was because I don't like the thin sound that they have.
Yeah.
And I like more like the bigger full sound. And when I listen now I try to listen to Doors sometimes because just because it's such, he tells stories about his life, and it's all like real stuff that he really experienced. But the sound of the music is just so tiny.
Yeah, well,
Now,
he's got that poetry album that he does, the spoken word. I mean, you can really connect with his emotional feelings without the music supporting that, and you're still getting the same visceral response. So
Yeah.
I completely understand.
but most of my just to finish this, most of
Okay.
my then later, like you said because of the bass, my biggest influence ever was Jaco Pastorius, the guy that played for Weather Report with Joni Mitchell and other people. He was for me the greatest bass player that ever lived and still is. I don't think there will be ever another one. And not because of his chops or skills, but because of how he played. He was literally able to when he played, he had such an amazing tone. He would just play like one or two or three notes, and it had so much meaning and had so much soul and spirit. He was like singing with his instrument because he always usually played fretless, especially when he played with Joni Mitchell's, like these little licks in between that he played, and like it was just all with Weather Report.
Yeah.
He was my first. It was Stanley Clarke when I grew up because I was fascinated by the speed he had, like the and then the slapping with the thumb.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, and there was a few other guys. I think his name was Jackie X or something, not Jackie X, Brand X, the band called Brand X.
Yeah.
He had a great bass player. And so I learned a lot of those chops. I learned everything from Stanley Clarke. Oh, the very first one was actually a guy from Yes, the one that's dead. What's his name again? I used to listen a lot to Yes, Pink Floyd, and then Genesis. and I used to hang out with him quite a bit. He actually knows what's his name. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The bass player from Yes was my very first influence, and I actually bought a Rickenbacker. And then it was Stanley Clarke and all the jazz guys, not jazz, what was it called?
Was it Chris Squire?
Chris Squire, yes,
Yeah.
Chris Squire, yeah. And then it was Stanley Clarke.
Well, he's from Philly, but I'm from Philly. I lived in Philly for up until I came to LA. So Stanley Clarke is a huge influence for me just in general because he's a Philadelphia guy.
Yeah, he also later he started doing film music just like me.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
film music now. But the way how he played, like his speed and his tone was also amazing. And then when I then finally found Jaco Pastorius, he was like absolutely like my biggest influence. Everything was for me jazz bass and fretless. I learned how to play fretless bass, and I actually have one of his original basses, and so that was my biggest influence and still is. I love that tone. I love the expression, and I think when I play, I have very similar ways of playing. For some reason, when I jam by myself, it's always kind of like jazzy. I don't know why. I'm not really. People think I'm a rock guy. I'm not really.
Well, no, well, but you came from improvisation, so it makes total sense. And I think you said something really important. I just want to touch on musically. There's a certain vocal quality, like you're connected to melody, right? So if you're playing the bass and you're connecting that as an instrument of melody, now you're able to, you're able to use that to express sort of even a vocal quality in a bass. I think that's what Jaco did. A tremendous. That's why he's so special in that way. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. He was very, very, very special. Yeah, it's sad how he died too. It's like, it seems like all the greatest musicians or artists in the world, they go first. They go young.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you, how did you actually join the Scorpions?
Oh, that's a weird story. I came into America, so I actually had my own band. As first, I studied classical music. At one point, my mouth was always like 100 miles ahead of my actions. I was already talking about being a rock star when I had no idea what that even was. I was like, 15, 16 years old. My bass was big, or 14 even. When I didn't even I had a bass made out of wood. I made it myself with fishing
Yeah, fishing line. Yeah,
fishing line strings. There was no sound. My friends had made pots, like drum sets, and pans. We had a band made out of wood, basically. And so I was already talking about, like, in the school, I was the biggest rebel. I never had music lessons. So at one point I said, either you guys are going to give me music lessons or I will never open my mouth again. So I was fired from that school because I didn't say anything for like 6 months, and I was fired from that school with the worst histories in German school. With the worst grades in German school history. And then I was downgraded from like the high school to like one lower. And that one I needed to finish in order to study music. So then I decided I want to study music. And in Germany back then, you couldn't just study any kind of music or like pop music. It didn't exist. You had to study classical music in order to be accepted. So I had to learn like a classical instrument, whether it was piano, violin, or I chose upright bass, the big one.
Yeah.
Like the cello, but bigger. So I learned that. I did like a crash course for like about a year and a half. I got this teacher. And then I studied classical music for 4.5 years at the conservatory in Lübeck, which is one of the hardest classical music conservatories in Europe. And after that, I had my own band in Germany. On the side, on the weekends, I did like top 40 gigs that paid quite good money to pay my rent and all these other things, because as I said, I was cut off from my parents and they were supporting me. So I had to support myself, and then I had a studio in Hamburg as well. I did really well. I started my own band, which everyone was completely fascinated by, but they all said, you know what, you're 10 years out of your time at least. In order for you to actually make it, you need to either go to England or to America. I'm like, And I asked everyone, where's the biggest city for music industry in the world? So they all told me Los Angeles. I'm like, Los Angeles. And I've seen it on movies. I didn't know anything about it. I thought Broadway was in LA and Hollywood Boulevard was in New York. That's how blue-eyed I was. So within 1 week, I sold everything that I had. And I made the decision to move to Los Angeles to just make a music career. But not because I wanted to be rich and famous, just because I think it was a crazy craving for love that I always had, to give love and receive love. That's why I wanted to conquer the world. So I came here, then I put another band together. The same singer I took with me, he actually was delayed for about 8 months. He came 8 months later than he was supposed to be. So I was stuck here by myself for 8 months, walking around and going, and then when he later came, I started my own band, and we were very successful. The band was called Beyond the Blind, and I was always hanging around with this drummer. He played in a band called, I can't remember, it's a somewhat famous German band. They had one hit in the 80s, Bonfire. The name is Bonfire. And with Edgar, and he kind of looked like the drummer from the Scorpions back in those days. I had long hair, and I looked a little bit like Francis Buchholz, the original band from the Scorpions T-shirt that we wore. I never wore a Scorpion T-shirt in my life. Actually, maybe like 5 or 6 times when I was with the band.
Why would you wear it? You're in the band. I'm the fan. I'm the one that's wearing the shirt.
I don't have any left. People steal it. They stole it, especially my father. Okay, when I became famous, they stole all my T-shirts, my jackets. I had so many leather jackets, all gone. So we used to walk around here in LA just hanging out, and a lot of people, especially this one guy, he was a Scorpion super fan. He always used to scream at me, "Francis, Francis!" I'm like, "Who the fuck is Francis?" And I'm like. And then later I found out Francis or Buchholz or whatever is the guy, the bass player from the Scorpions. So I never really paid attention to never listened to it. I didn't never listen to much rock. I always liked Van Halen, yes, the more sophisticated rock bands, but not the heavy metal stuff. Wasn't really my cup of tea until later. And we used to walk around, and a few times we actually like in line to go to a club, and me and Edgar, who looked like the drummer from the Scorpions, I looked like the bass player from the Scorpions, and they would go like, "Oh my God, Scorpions, come right in!" They're all the way in the back. They walked us in. We're like, okay. So eventually, he moved back to Germany. They fired Francis because he stole about 25 million from the band because he used to do all the finances. Together with the tax guy, there was some big tax fraud thing for years and years and years. So he calls me, Edgar, out of nowhere. I was freshly married, not actually freshly married. At that point, I was working construction for $6 an hour. I was here illegal for 3 years, and I started working construction with illegal Mexicans for $6 an hour, and because I had no more money left. And so then he called me one day out of nowhere, picks up the phone. "Hey, the Scorpions just fired the bass player. You would be perfect, you got to call him, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Who? Scorpions? What?" I hung up the phone. "Dude, I'm sleeping. Call me later." And he calls back, screams in my ear, like, "Dude, what the fuck? Blah, blah, blah. Scorpions, the biggest band in the world. Just have winds of change, yada, yada, yada." I'm like, okay. So I called the drummer in Monaco, Herman, Rarabel at that time. And he says, "Can you send me a tape?" So I sent him a tape. Well, I was only playing like Jocko stuff, right? Like jazz fretless bass, like and like. And then he called me. He said, "Wow, that's very impressive. Can you also play rock?" And I was very arrogant. I said, "I can play anything." So he said, "Okay, well, I need a bass player like that. Can you come to Monaco?" Then I borrowed some money together, and I flew to Monaco, and he picked me up in a golden Rolls Royce. And I played on his record. He had an English guitar player. He needed a bass player for that. I played on his record, and it was horrible. It was just absolutely, for me, it was mind-bendingly bad.
Yeah.
Because he didn't know how to play drums. Okay, his bass drum was always ahead. His snare drum was always behind. Okay, and the click was somewhere in the middle. I mean, if the click was here, his bass drum was always ahead, and his snare was always behind.
But he played with a click track, and he was still couldn't keep time.
No. And the other guitar player, he played somewhere in between. And I was always like, okay, should I play with the bass drum or should I play with the snare drum? What do you guys want me to do? And so eventually I figured out a way, and the record's actually out. I don't even know what it's called. But then after 3 or 4 days, and there are golden records everywhere. This palace in Nice, no, not in Nice, in Monaco. Huge mansion with his young wife, gorgeous woman, and I've never seen anything like that. I was like, whoa. And I mean, hundreds of golden platinum records everywhere. And so I walked by his office 3 or 4 days later. He said, hey guys, I think I found the perfect guy. Not only does he look like Francis, who we just fired, but he lives in America and he plays like a young god. I never heard anyone play like him, like a bass player. I never heard a bass player like that in my life. And I think we should meet with him. So then they flew me out to Germany. I met with the rest of the guys who were very rude at that point, but there was an immediate chemistry. I was not nervous. We both were originally from Germany. Hanover is about like 50 miles further south than Hamburg. That's where they were living. And that's where we met. And they were very focused on their tax fraud thing, like on their whatever thing. And so then they said, okay, well, let's play a few songs. We played like 6 songs or something. They couldn't remember their own songs, which to me was like, what are you guys doing? So I had to teach them some of their own songs. They were like arguing, like, no, it goes like this. And I said, no, wait, stop. It actually goes like this. Okay, let me play it for you. And then they were looking at me like I was some kind of alien or something. And then at one point, I went to the bathroom and I came back and there was a drum set right there. So I sat down on the drum set and played some grooves. And they were all looking at me, what the fuck? Because I was literally playing better than the drummer, like Herman. I was like, really in the pocket, like, wow. So then the tax guy came, and from one second to the other, from music, it went to money stuff. And I said, okay, sorry, you have to go now. We got to talk about this meeting. They didn't ask me for my number. They didn't tell me we're gonna get back to you. They had like shoe boxes full from every bass player all around the world. Some of the best bass players, most famous bass players in the world, that all wanted to join the band. And they never listened to any of them, I found out later. A month later, I'm back in LA. I was working on a record at that point, doing all the drum programming and keyboard programming for Lenny Wolf for Kingdom Come. The 4th record or something. And I come to the studio, there's a message there, call Monaco. The wife from Herman picks up, says, hey, the band wants you here right away playing on a new single. The ticket's already on the airport. You're flying out tomorrow. Wow. Then I flew over there. I played on the record. It was called Ave Maria No More, the remake of that song. First record that I did with the band. And then they said, hey, you want to come to the Wisseloord studio in Amsterdam? We're going to mix the record there. I said, okay, we can get to know each other a little bit. We were there for a few days. Then Doc McGee, biggest manager in the world in the history of rock. He managed Bon Jovi, Scorpions, Skid Row, Kiss, Motley Crue at that time, the number one. He comes flying in because of me and then says, okay, kid, I'm going to go back to the hotel. Because I was super young back then. I'm like, 30 years younger than the rest of the guys. Come back to the hotel. When you're done here, I'll wait for you. So I come back like 3 or 4 hours. He's still sitting in the bar. I said, what do you want to drink? I said, I have a beer. Okay, it looks like you're the new bass player of the Scorpions. How much do you want?
Wow. How did you know how much to ask for?
I didn't. I think I went somewhat unconscious. I mean, I was like, so from 1 minute to the other, I was literally given the chance from an absolute nobody to become a superstar.
Wow.
It took less than 30 seconds, that one question.
Wow.
That was not just a question, that was a fact. He said, you're it.
Yeah.
They don't want anyone else. they never even listened to anyone else.
How did that make you feel? Like, think about your life up to that point, because we all have things that happen in life where there's a path that opens up, and some people are, they don't take the path. But going through all the struggles, working construction, moving, having that family, how did you feel in that moment, if you remember?
I don't remember. I think I just got really dizzy. And I kept thinking, like, how much do I want? How much do I want? What do I do? What do I say here? Like, what the hell just hit me? What
Yeah.
am I going to do? I was so unprepared. I was just sitting there completely blue-eyed. Honestly, I blacked out for about a day or two. Not because I was super impressed or anything. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say because I've never really been much into business or anything, especially not the music industry, because that's not the reason why I did all this. It
Right.
wasn't because of business or fame, like how people approach it these days. It was a whole different ball game for me. It was all about passion. I'm like, all of a sudden, I was put in front of this business decision that included millions of dollars, and like, the opportunity of buying mansions and houses and having all this money. And I was like, what the fuck do I do now?
It's amazing.
So I think I hired a lawyer, I think, that advised me what to do and how to do it. Because again, I just didn't know.
Well, I think you
So
did the right thing, because that's how people get taken advantage of in the music industry, of not having representation around them. So I think it makes sense. You spent 12 years with the Scorpions. Is that 10, 12? I don't know.
14, yeah.
14. Did you participate in writing, studio recording, or were you just a hired person who played bass in concerts?
No, I was a full included band member. I was on every autograph card. I was on every golden and platinum record. I played on every record. Actually, we did one record with David Foster. Okay, here in LA that we recorded. When he came into my life, we recorded the video in Beirut, where they have now a lot of trouble going on with all the things just exploded, unfortunately. And so it was a battlefield when we recorded there too. At that time, it was bullet holes everywhere. It's kind of crazy. The video recorded there, but
Yeah.
the record recorded here. And when we recorded the record, David Foster is very, very musically. And I hate to say it, but a lot of these rock bands that people are fans of or whatever, they're not really very versatile, like the Scorpions, for example. I remember one day we were in the studio and we were next to UB40, and they needed like a really, really simple, like A major, no, what was it, A minor, D major, D minor, like a got 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 for reggae, right?
Yeah.
So they asked our guitar. They didn't have a guitar player. I said, "Can you play this?" And Matthias, our guitar player, went in there and he could not play this.
Wow.
He was not able to play the offbeat, like got. He would play like 1, 2, got. He would play it straight.
Yeah.
He was not able to play on the offbeat, like got. I'm like, oh my god, I could play this in like a second. Just give me the guitar. And then Rudolph eventually came in and he played it. So a lot of these people, other musicians too, like for example Michael Schenker, who's a
Yeah.
big rock legend, right?
Mhm.
I was touring with him for like a year or 2 years or something. He was with the Scorpions and I was with blah 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 whatever. And then I noticed like he was always new. I said, so how did you learn how to play music? I said, I never learned how to play music. I just play by my ear. I said, what do you mean? He says, I don't know. Like if you ask me where the G on an E string is, I don't know and I don't want to know. He literally doesn't know anything about music theory. He does not know anything. He just plays from his ear. So same with the band Scorpions. They know what they do. They can do very well what they play, right? But if you ask them to play anything else, they can't. What was the original question again? I forgot.
I mean, you kind of answered it anyway. We were talking about what your involvement was with the Scorpions. You're a full band member. You participate in the
Yes,
writing, you participate in
yes.
the recording, and also the
I was a
play.
full included band member. I was in every photo shoot. I was in every press conference.
Yeah.
I was in every tour. I played on every record. Like I said, one record actually, the two guitar players. This is I think where I swerved
Yeah.
off. They were not allowed to play. Okay, when David Foster was producing the record, Rudolf Schenker and Matthias Japs were not allowed in the studio. He used his own guitar player
Wow.
because he just said they were just not good enough up to his standards. So it was me, the drummer. It was me playing bass, then drummer. Like at that point, it was James Kollek,
Yeah.
who now died unfortunately, and the singer Klaus Meine. That was
Klaus.
it. The rest was the keyboards and the guitars were done by studio musicians.
Wow.
So yeah, I was completely involved. I was in every picture. I got all the gold and platinum records. I was in every studio. I was in every band meeting. I was on every show. I was on every radio interview, TV interview. I was everywhere included, 100%.
Do you have one or maybe a couple most memorable experiences while being with the Scorpions?
God, there's so many. I mean, like,
I know that's why I'm putting you on the spot with one or two. Yeah, I think, and I'll let you think through the question, but I'm imagining that going through, you had your own band, but you're playing like small gigs here and there, but coming out to like a stadium or an arena and having that sort of interaction with the crowd, that is a memorable experience in itself. Maybe the first time you did that, but were there anything like that really stood out to you?
yeah, I mean, the biggest show we ever did was in Poland. We played in front of 750,000 people. That was quite back in those days, I think it was the second biggest show ever performed on planet Earth. In those, I think it was like 90 something. And I think the only show that was bigger at that point was Paul Simon with 1 million in Hyde Park. I mean, in New York.
Yeah.
It was not a festival. It was just a Scorpion show with a local band opening up. That was very impressive. Then we played in Moscow for the Red Square birthday. That was 450,000 people. Then Rio, 350,000. I mean, we had a lot of festivals where I got to meet every single. Oh, one funny thing.
Yeah.
Check this out. Before I started playing bass, before I actually got my bass, my brother had an acoustic guitar, and the very first thing that my brother taught me was, guess what?
Stairway?
No, something like that. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, Smoke in the Water.
Yes. So that's pretty much a lot of first musician's song ever,
That's
right?
true. That's true.
So I used to play that like all the freaking time. And years later, when I like somewhere in the middle of my career with the Scorpions, Deep Purple was opening up for us. It was first Whitesnake, then Deep Purple,
Wow.
and then Scorpions. They were the two opening acts, right? So every single night, I'm for like 3 or 4 months, America and Canada, I'm sitting in my dressing room as the headliner, and I'm listening to like dang, 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 and like tens of thousands of people like screaming and yelling. I'm like, wow, this is really something, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, but one thing I have to tell you, like those are one of the few moments when I actually thought, wow, you actually made it. You actually made it. You did something. You actually like got somewhere in your life.
yeah,
But for some reason, I was never the type of person that actually thought that my career changed me in any kind of ways.
yeah.
People always think, oh yeah, when I'm rich and famous, then I will be happy. then you know something will happen or whatever. Doesn't work like that. Like, you know, I got famous literally within less than 1 month. I was on every cover of every music magazine. I was all over MTV as the new fastest, most, you know, fastest, most successful growing, whatever, or like most like fastest coming rock star, whatever.
Up and coming, yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
one of the fastest in the history, because I went from absolute no one. Because most people there already did some stuff, you know,
Yeah.
playing a few records here or there. I didn't do anything except the Kingdom Come stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was completely an unwritten, you know, piece of paper. There was nothing. And then from nothing, it went on to all the way to the top.
It's an
And
amazing
so,
life lesson. It's just an amazing life lesson to be able to, you know, be sort of happy with who you are and then have the opportunities come to you. Kind of what
but
happened.
the way how people always perceive life, especially these days, you know, so I meet so many people, like so many young people come here, especially to LA, you know, they want to be actor, they want to be writers, they want to be this, they want to be that. And like, yeah, I want to be rich. But if you ask people on the street all over the world now, you know, we all seen it on social media, you know, 85% or 90% of the people, the two questions that they get is, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, or both, right?
Yeah.
And they all think when you're rich and famous, something happens, some happiness kicks in, or you get some satisfaction or something. These things don't happen. Okay, like when I came from a rich family, then I was completely poor for over what, 10 years, like working my ass off, okay? And then I made everyone's dream come true, you know, I didn't even think I was ever going to make this that far. But you know what? It changed absolutely nothing. I still was the same person. I still had the same, you know, passions. I still had the same, you know, you still drink water. You still have to have food. Like, yeah, you live in big hotels. You have, you know, as much money on. I didn't even, when after I came back from the first tour, I had no idea what the amount of money was. I looked at my account. I'm like, how many zeros are these? How much money is this actually? I was counting like 3 or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So how much money is this? Like, how can someone tell me? I didn't know. I just didn't know. And you know what? It didn't do anything to me. It did not. I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel like, oh, you know, I made it. I'm a rock star or whatever. That feeling never kicks in. So this is when I tattooed on my wrist. Now, the most important thing in life that I learned, lesson, to take this away for everyone: live in the moment, dream your dreams, not at the expense of the future. But if you don't know how to live right here, right now, and enjoy your life to the fullest, you will never find happiness, no matter how rich or famous you will get. It does not change anything. Trust me. You have to. What the most important part is of my life, what the most exciting parts, as people always ask me that, I honestly can tell you, some of the times here in LA when I was fighting and dreaming and, you know, like passionately working on my success on a daily basis, those were the happiest times of my life. When I was dreaming and I was basically nowhere and I had nothing to lose. The minute everything kicks in, everything starts getting complicated. You have a new car, you buy a new house, and then all these people around you, and like there's always all this stuff going on, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, as Biggie said, more money, more problems. Thanks.
The journey, and actually being able to live in the moment and enjoying. Most people don't know how to enjoy themselves in the moment. They always live in the future. When I do this, when I have this, when I have a wife, when I have a new Ferrari, when I have a bigger house, then I'll be happy. No, you won't.
Yeah.
Not if you're not able to find happiness right now with what you have. You will not find happiness or even if you have your own plane, 10 of your own planes and whatever, it just doesn't happen. Doesn't kick in.
It's a great lesson. How did you get involved in film scoring?
All in between, I used to have these crazy, when I bought my first house, which was quite large, bigger than the guy from the rest of the guys, because they lived in Germany. There's 58% taxes there. So, and it was right after the earthquake, so I got a really good deal. I was only 2 years old. I used to have these parties with like mostly after parties, and one of my regular guests was Paris Hilton. She was there every single weekend. It was always the last person to leave, walking around with a little diamond phone thingy and texting and shit. And the Kardashians were there all the time. J-Lo was there. You know, a lot of celebrities, a lot of big names. I could probably name more, but I forgot. You know, I never paid attention to all that. Sometimes I had up to 1,000 people there. And wait, I forgot the question. What was the question?
How did you get involved in film scoring?
Oh, yeah. Also, okay. So I had a studio. I had like a, you know, like big house, and then one of the family room I actually turned into a big recording studio with the live setup, drums and all that. So when I had these parties, I would be there, you know, smoking a little weed or something, and while there was like 800 people running around my house, I'll be in the studio just jamming, making music, like composing with my, you know, whole electronic computer setup, right? Because I always loved that. Since I started making music, I always loved making filmish sound of music, like grand music, you know. And so one day these film producers came in and they said, "Wow, your music sounds really filmish." I said, "Yeah, I've been hearing that for a long time. Have you ever made a movie score?" I said, "No." So, "Do you want to make one? We just did this movie called Lancelot. We need a film score." I said, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to do it." So I did it. And that was my first movie. Then I got another one. I think Gangland. I invested like, you know, a few $100,000. They still owe me half of it. Don't invest in movies, people.
Oh yeah, that's good lesson. I know. I did it twice too, so I know.
Yeah. And do they still owe you money?
Oh, I lost a lot of money the first time. The second time, I lost very little money. So
Welcome to the club.
exactly.
Yeah. So I invested money. I had a part as a samurai sword fighter, as an actor, and wrote the two main songs, Gangland theme song and another song for the end credits. And then another song after, another same company hired me again because they said, "Oh my God, you're so good, blah, blah, blah." And then I did the entire film score movie called Redemption with Chris Penn, Don the Dragon Wilson, and some other people. Chris, I think Sean Penn's brother.
Yeah, brother, he passed away. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I did that movie. I did the entire film score, and I wrote 17 songs for that movie.
Wow.
So I had a lot of movie music in that. And then for some reason, it just took off. Like people kept lining up. They're like, "Yeah, music, music, music." And I did.
Did you get to hang out with Ice-T on Gangland at all?
Who?
Ice-T? Wasn't
Of
he
course,
Gangland?
yeah. For like 3 nights, we were shooting at the Universal Studio lot.
Yeah.
I was there every day. And Ice-T, Coolio,
Yeah.
Costas Mandylor, who else was in there? Christina Logan, the girl that played Terminator 3, the main star. And
I want to ask you a music supervision question because you're also the music supervising. I'm just curious, do you get to see a script? Do you get to see an outline? Like, how do you develop the ideas? Or do you have ideas and then you try to fit those into after you see, you know, what the movie is going to be about? How does that work? What's your process?
I don't read script. I refuse reading script. And as a musician or music supervisor or composer, you don't really need to read a script. You know, there's no need for that. Because your job starts when there's somewhat, we call it locked picture, that means somewhat of an edit, like a rough edit. You can only start writing music, especially these days when you work with computers, when you're actually at a finished locked picture. That means there's no more frames, you know, that are changing, like, you know, a split second move coming or going. Because if you do that, it screws up your whole timeline. So the picture has to be locked and finished, like a finished edit. A lot of times they still have to do the special effects, which you then see just green screen.
Yeah.
Like for sci-fi or like monster things, you just don't see the monster yet or something. So you have to imagine it. And same for music supervision. You need a lock picture. Well, not so much, but for music supervision, your job is actually to buy and negotiate songs. Like, let's say they want a song from Alice Cooper, they want a song from Ice-T, or whatever, or let's say they want a song from Eminem. Then you got to call the publishing company, you got to call the record company, and you got to negotiate prices with them. That's basically your job. And you got to come up with ideas what song would work best where. Film score.
And then you have a budget for that, and you have to clear that within a
Yes.
budget. And you can say,
Yes.
I can't afford a Rolling Stones song, but it's something similar in the genre of Rolling Stones. Maybe there is another song that I can get that's cheaper, something like that.
Yeah, a lot of times you have to educate the film people because they don't know too much about music. They like their head is in the clouds. They're like, oh yeah, can we get a Scorpion song, whatever. Like, yeah, that's going to cost you about 500,000 to $1 million. Okay,
Exactly.
Realistically, but I can get you maybe an Alice Cooper song for like 50K.
Yeah.
And I got them. Like, a lot of times I got the prices down to half because I know these people personally. I call them personal favors.
Yeah.
So, but you also have to come up with ideas for what the film score is supposed to sound like. And then you create, as a music supervisor, also your job is, not always, but sometimes, most of the time, what's called a temp score. You give the editor like temporary music from Star Wars or like any kind of like Spielberg film or whatever it is, like Pirates of the Caribbean or something, yeah. the score, and they use that as an example to edit the film. Mm-hmm. So the composer then ends up with a temp score that he listens to, and then he somewhat has to like compose something that's similar, or at least give him ideas to what these people want the film to sound like.
Yeah, you have a feeling of what the music is supposed to be like, and you can compose to that sort of feel.
Yeah, that's the job of a music supervisor. Number one, have an idea, unless they already have ideas, for, we call them the needle drops, the songs that end up in the movie, and negotiate. You get a budget, negotiate the prices to the best possible whatever, or come up with alternatives. And then also sometimes, or most of the time, creating a temp score.
Got it.
That's
amazing. Yeah, it's always been my dream to be able to do that. I had a small role we did. That's why I invest in movies. Did a couple just so I can kind of buy my way into doing some music supervision for a film. So I lost money, but I got an education out of it. So that's good. I wanted to ask you, as you get older, how important is your health to the motivation of giving you that energy on what you want to do next? Like, I know you do some art, you have some other things, but how is health impacting some of those things that you want to achieve in your life still?
What do you mean by health? I mean, I just literally, we talk about it at the gym all the time. I had knee surgery last year.
That's why I want to bring it up, because I wanted to let people understand that you said, being present, people have goals and dreams, but when you have a physical condition, you're hyper focusing on how to address that physical condition, a health related thing. That becomes a very important thing in your life.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the surgery completely knocked me off my path for like the last year, because I was completely focused on regaining my full strength and then healing, like physical therapy and this and that, like doing as much cardio as possible. I lost like 35 pounds last year, and now it's back to normal, except now I have a little bit of pain, and we have to probably do some PRP or some stuff like that. So, I mean, health is important, but a lot of the things that I do, you don't really need your, like now, I mean, if you're on stage, of course you need to be physically fit, and it keeps you young and it keeps you physical. There's a lot of people tell me, oh my God, you look so young and so whatever, you're vital, whatever. I'm telling you, when you're on the road for a year, it feels like you're on the road for 3 months. Wow. Like a month feels like a week.
Wow.
Like 6 months feel like maybe like a month, and a whole year feels like maybe 2 or 3 months. It's like time flies, so there's always something happening. So I think that's why a lot of these musicians, they still look so young and vital.
Yeah.
Look at Sting, he looks ageless. Or
It does. Oh, I mean, I just saw the Rolling Stones. They're in their 80s, and I'm not, I'm not sure they look very young, but the amount of energy that Mick has, just amazing. At being in his 80s. I have some questions I ask all my guests. I think you answered the first one, but just to repeat, the very first concert that you ever attended was a concert that you went where you felt that boom boom in your gut, right? Was that the very first concert that you attended?
that was the very first concert that I liked, where I saw a live band actually really in live. Yes, like right in front of me.
Do you remember the last concert that you went to? Not you playing in it, just you as an audience member.
I don't really go to many concerts. I think the last concert I saw Rammstein, which was absolutely wonderful, because I know them since they started. We're kind of friends, also from Germany, and that's one of my favorite bands, German bands, and like really hard rock. I love just the energy and with all the fire and pyro. It's just crazy good. And after that, I saw the Scorpions when they were here in town.
Yeah.
And I think that was the last one, Rammstein and Scorpions.
Yeah. It was.
I don't go to many concerts, really.
Yeah.
I don't like being in the crowd. I'm used to being on stage. It's kind of hard for me to be in the crowd, unless it's someone like, Prince, Michael Jackson. I like those big, the old school, the big over the top kind of like, the real big shows, just going to a concert where there's just a few musicians on the stage and there's a little bit of lights going on. Like after 3 or 4 songs, I get bored, to be honest.
All right. So this is a question I ask everybody. For the next year, you could only listen to 5 albums. Now, you don't have to remember the name of the actual album. You can say Michael Jackson or whatever it is. What would be those 5 albums that you listen to for the next year?
Earth, Wind and Fire, Bob Marley.
That's 2.
I only need 2.
Right.
I could survive the rest of my life listening just by Earth, Wind and Fire and Bob Marley.
That's
Because
amazing.
both of them are just so positive and so full of energy, and they make me want to move and just put a smile on my face.
I love it.
Yes, there's a lot of other music. I'm exaggerating a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a lot of other music that I like. And I like good songs. It's not just bands. I don't listen to specifically like bands, but I like good songs. Like, for example, a lot of very underrated song that I always listen to or love to listen to is Walk on Water from 30 Seconds to Mars.
Oh, yeah.
That song. I love that song. I don't know why, but it just does something to me.
Connects to you. Yeah.
Another song that I cannot live without, that everyone should listen to as many times as possible, has a great story too, is like We Are the World. Yeah. With all these, they recorded that song in one night. All the biggest singers. You know this song?
Oh, yeah. I saw the documentary as well.
Right? There's a documentary about it. It's probably did it win actually? Did it win anything?
I don't know, but I watch on Netflix, and the funniest part of the documentary was there was 2. There was one when I think it was a Waylon Jennings, I think, that Stevie Wonder wanted to sing in Swahili, and that's not even a native language or what. And Waylon's like, no, good old boy is singing in Swahili. So he left. He's not even on the album. And then Al Jarreau ended up getting drunk throughout the night. And he couldn't even
That's the one
perform.
on Netflix. I think that's a Showtime. But that's on Netflix. That's the one that actually wasn't. That's the one that I saw too.
Yeah, that's great.
And the only one that's missing is Prince.
Yeah, he never showed up.
With all these.
Yeah, he was like Michael Jackson's there. I'm not going.
Yeah. Although that night they recorded after the American Music Awards.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and Lionel Richie hosted the awards. Then he went to record that.
I know.
All that together.
What a night! I highly recommend for everyone in the music industry or interested in music or even not interested in music to watch the documentary and listen to that song, just play it on YouTube. Don't just listen to it, watch the YouTube video.
Yeah.
That's one of every time I host and have people over here, especially youngsters, I hang out with a lot of youngsters. And every time I make them listen to this, and most of them have never heard it, they're like, "Oh my God!" They're completely fascinated. Well, play it again, play it again. You know, that's just.
I wonder if they actually know a lot of the musicians that were on there still.
Yeah, some of them they do actually know. You'd be surprised. Like I'm almost always surprised how involved the young generation is into like music from back in the days.
Amazing. All right, so final bonus question for you. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
My room?
Yes.
At my parents' house. It was. Well, we lived in how many bedrooms? It was like one, two, three, four, 5 bedrooms. Typical German house in the forest. Grew up right by the forest. I was a forest kid. So I was always, most of the time I was outdoors in the forest. I could survive in the forest for like a few months if you just dropped me off there. I know everybody in the forest. And at one point, I became obsessed with plants. I used to steal like little, not steal, but at the doctor's office, like a little cactus or whatever that had like a little offspring, or just take it and plant it. I had like, I don't know, like 100 plants or something in my room. And then I started growing weed, of course.
Yeah.
Because we had parrots. We had parrots. My father had parrots, these two big, like colorful parrots that I always had to feed. And so in order to calm those fuckers down so they don't, hack you on the face, the big thing, because they can hurt you.
Yeah.
I'd always blow weed in their face. They loved it. They got, after a few weeks, they got obsessed. Every time I would smoke some weed, they would come closer. And one of them would always hang down, upside down, go like, "Arr, arr, arr," and the other one just put their mouth into the cage and just hang down and just like wiggle back and forward. So they loved it. And I figured out eventually that there was marijuana seeds in their food.
Oh.
So me and my friends, we took those seeds and we planted marijuana everywhere. So my room was full of marijuana plants and other plants, cacti, any kind of plants I could put my hands on. It was super green. And the whole house, I put like at least 20 plants, outdoor, indoor, everywhere. And they all grew a few. But we gave some to the neighbors. "Oh, that's so beautiful. What is this?" And I'm like, yeah, you can have some. And like, they smell so nice. What is it? Blah, blah, blah. But after they got ripe, we figured out that they were actually castrated because in the food, I mean, they grew. One plant was like almost 20 feet high, the one that I put outside. And we tried to smoke it, but there was just no THC in it.
Yeah, there were male plants probably.
So I was like a nature freak. I had like a lot of plants in my room. And
did you have any posters on your wall? Did you have any like posters?
Oh yeah. I had a few posters on the wall. Like at one point when I was young, there was Susie Quattro because she was hot in the bass player. The poster of her, I remember. Who else did I have? I don't know. It was so long ago. When I was super, super young, when I was a child, my parents put like a wallpaper from the Jungle Book. I remember that was my earliest memory.
There you go.
And then other than that, I for some reason I always had 2 beds. I don't know why. I had one bed here and another bed there.
Yeah.
Oh, I used to meditate a lot when I was like after I stopped smoking weed. I stopped for like 2 years and I was meditating 2-3 times deep, like deep transcendental meditation.
Yeah.
So I had one bed for the meditation, one to sleep in, and was a little bit hippie-ish, I would say, but not over the top. But mostly it was music stuff in there and plants.
Yeah, cool. Hey, Ralph, where can people, if you want them to, engage with you, connect with you for any of your services, anything you're doing, or maybe art or music supervision, do you have anywhere people can go and connect with you?
Yeah, of course, my OnlyFans. Just kidding, no.
Is that when you're doing your feet? You're showing your feet on your OnlyFans?
No, I actually signed up for one once. I've never even looked at OnlyFans, but I went halfway through. I stopped. But because everyone told me you should blah 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 blah, not sexual things,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like music lessons or whatever.
Gotcha.
So no, I'm mostly active. I have Facebook. Yeah, I never go on there. I would say like Instagram 100%. That's the only platform I'm really active on.
Cool.
You know, I don't know if you want me to show it or whatever. You can show it in your. Maybe we should do a little video right now.
There you go.
Film the fact that I'm on the show. What's the show called again?
Everything is personal.
Okay. So today I'm on this show. What's it called?
Everything is personal.
Well, it's a podcast, and look, he's wearing a scorpion shirt, which I've never done. I actually have never really worn a scorpion shirt in my life, I think, but he's doing it. So that's what I've been doing for the last hour. So today on this show, oh, I'm gonna save this.
There you go.
It's a podcast, and look, he's wearing a scorpion shirt, which I've never done. Actually, I've never really worn a scorpion shirt in my life, I think, but he's doing it.
So I just wanted to thank my audience, for sticking with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all the great reviews. Thank you for buying the book, Making Cannabis Personal, on Amazon. And Ralph, I just want to thank you. I know that you're very busy, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join me and be on the show. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Of course. And like I said, if you want to, I don't know if you're going to add this to the thingy or something. My Instagram is Ralph Rickermann, just my name.
Right.
And that's where you can follow and find me and communicate with me. That's the only and best platform to reach me.
Cool. I
Also,
appreciate it.
being on here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, have a great rest of the day. Is
Yeah,
that it?
man. Yeah, we'll hang out at the gym.
All right, sounds good.